What we're going to do, as everybody knows, when I do this show, I usually have a huge KNIME team behind me because I come with these ideas. Well, let's be honest, the train this time of magicians was not in because of COVID. So I get the chance to work with Paolo. Now, for any of you that don't know Paolo, I just have to give you a 10-second introduction to Paolo. This is not Paolo. This is my favorite keyboardist of all time, but it could be Paolo because Paolo is one of those guys that can pull everything together. Paolo, thank you for working with me on this, and I'm going to dive straight into the presentation. We're going to talk about collaboration, and it needs a bit of thinking. So first, just look at the basic definition. Two or more people working together to complete a task or achieve a goal. So far, so good. The interesting thing is when you look at data science, we end up looking at it from two perspectives. There's two basic kinds of collaboration. One is structured and one is unstructured. Now, they both have advantages. You know, unstructured is supposedly might be better for creativity, whereas structured might be a bit fixed. But actually, if you look at it, I can show you good examples of both. Unstructured can get things done, and whereas structured, just as in musicians, if you've ever seen jazz musicians, they are following the rules, but they are just creating fantastic music. We're going to focus more on the left-hand side. It's interesting in the industry that in the data science space, a lot of people are saying, "Ooh, let's go with Google Docs. Let's make sure everything's editable in Google Docs." I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I want 20 KNIME users all at, working on a workflow as if it's a Google Docs. We're going to focus more on the left. It's more like a Scrum, an Agile, a Kanban, a Six Sigma, a little more structured. What are we going to talk about? Not just programmers. We're going to talk about lots of different people. Now, you can debate about the words you want to use here. Data engineers, data wranglers, data analysts, data scientists, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to worry about those because what we find is that when we work with you, they all actually have fundamental things that they share. And I'd like to go through those because it talks about the philosophy of how KNIME is approaching collaboration. Let's first take a look. Forget the labels. What do all of these users have in common that are going to be using KNIME in some way? Some of them are going to be focused on creating great results. That's a very high focus. Some just want to use them. Some are going to use machine learning, a high focus. But then again, there'll be others where that is not as important. Deploy and automate. For some groups, very important. For others, not as important. Understanding data in different contexts, that of course is really key across all of the personas. Understanding the business, and one of the key ones, the responsibility for the business. Now, what I'd like to quickly do is walk through each of the groups of users that KNIME sees, talk a little bit about what we're doing about collaboration, give you a little bit of an overview so I can give it quickly to Paolo to show you how we see a lot of this working in today's world. Let's take a look at the category that you and I all know. Many of you are going to be one of these. You're going to be a Phil or you're going to be a Catherine, a data engineer, an ETL person, the data wrangler, or a data science or an ML specialist. Take a look at what we have that's in common. We both want to create. We both want to create great results. Sometimes we need to deploy, and if we don't understand the data or the business, we spend a lot of time making sure we get there. We don't, either one of us, have a responsibility directly for the business. We're not responsible for sales, for marketing, for finance, or et cetera, but we're going to contribute. What's the difference between the two of us? The difference is only the emphasis on machine learning. Sometimes, for example, Catherine is an expert on machine learning. She'll use that for some of her problems. I am not an expert on machine learning, but that doesn't mean I can't do fantastic things with KNIME. What is KNIME doing for those people? These are the things all of you know. And you heard Bernd talking and Scott talking about a lot of the things we're continuing to do. The workbench, the nodes, the extension. There's actually no difference between all of these types of users, except for their emphasis on their specialty area. I think that's one of the reasons we've been so successful here. And we'd like to, once again, help your users by not trying to put them into too solid of a category, but instead think about the tasks they have to perform and where they are on those scales. How far can we take this? Well, we can take this to this new category out there. This has emerged just over the last year called code first. And Monty is a great example of a code first. What is a code first? Someone who likes Python, someone who likes Java, someone who likes R. And, you know, what's the difference, though, really between Monty and Katrin and Phil? Not a lot, except for the fact that he has a preference. His preference in this case is Python. And as you know, we're trying to do a lot of things to make it easy for these users to also be included in the platform. You know, you've already heard Ernst talking a little bit about what's going on with some of the different interfaces with Python, et cetera, et cetera. We've already got a lot of things, and we continue to add things to try to make it easier for code first people to be integrated into the platform, either so that they can share what they do or so that they can take advantage of what KNIME can offer them. Now, here's one that we might not run into every day, but it's very, very popular in large organizations: modeling, ML operations, DevOps. This might be somebody like Anna, who, yes, by the way, Anna can go off and use machine learning, but had a responsibility there for a while where her number one thing in the world was making sure it got deployed. She had a business responsibility to make sure the reports and the production systems instrumented and worked within KNIME. This, a lot of times, is a different function. What we think of, though, is the fact that this function needs to be included within the focus area of the organization, be within the team. They shouldn't be someone on the other side of the fence. What are we doing there? Jim's talked about this already, talked a little bit about some of the features we're giving that will help ML operations people, but most importantly is this new enhancement of integrated deployment. We've talked a lot about that. It's not just useful for the ones creating workflows, it's really useful for those over on the operations side as well. So we're trying to make sure that that group can be included in the community of KNIME users as well. Now, up until this point, it might all be obvious, but now we have that other group, the business users. And there's lots and lots of different definitions out there. Citizen data scientist is a popular one. A citizen data scientist, to me, that's kind of like an oxymoron, a working vacation or something. You know, you're either a citizen or a data scientist, but we'll just leave that little discussion. There is something in it, though, that I'd like to cover now, and that are the different types of users. And we've seen different types of users in some of the presentations we've gone through up till now from the different users. Sometimes you have information consumers. Sometimes you have different interaction users. For example, a Heather might actually understand a little about the data and a little bit about the business, but has a very, very specific task that has to be done very quickly, very efficiently, doesn't have to have a lot of interaction, just needs the information. Hit the button, get the information. A Christiana, on the other side, may know the data a little better, may actually know more about the business, may want to interact with it, and we've seen examples from the customers of these applications. What's interesting is be very careful not to just lump all your different business users in one of the different categories. It depends on their tasks. Sometimes they'll want to have more interfacing, sometimes they'll want to have less interaction, and that's the trick. They want to use workflows, but they never want to see them. What's KNIME doing there? Well, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, and there's some fantastic examples out there talked about by users. Guided analytics. The whole concept that you can automate and interact, and you can build the different workflow applications so that they have the appropriate level of interfacing or interaction for the users. So far, so good. The last group, though, is for me the most misunderstood group of the KNIME users. These are business analysts. These are people don't really know machine learning, not really so much worried about the deployment, but they understand their data, they understand the business, and they're responsible for some aspects of the business. These people are desperate. Whatever they're doing now, they want to do more. They want to do more of the creating of results. What KNIME's doing for that particular group is we're trying to make sure that it's first very easy for them to hook into their tools, the Power BIs, the Tableaus, the Spotfire, the Clicks, or most importantly, that number one BI tool on the planet, Excel, and make sure that they can capture and utilize the power of KNIME from within their favorite tool. By the way, just a hats off to Continental. Continental was the one that contributed all the nodes so that we can just do fantastic things in Excel. But what we're finding over and over, and I think many of you could back this up, we're finding that these users, these business analysts, they want to create themselves. They want to actually go off and create things. And for them, the KNIME Analytics platform is perfect. They love it. Bring an Excel user and show them how to do this. Some things you might want to do. Don't give them all 3,500 nodes. Focus it down. Give them just the components, the nodes, and the pieces that they need. Tailor. If you've got KNIME Server, we can actually make it so that you automatically package the way that this is actually prepared and delivered to your different end users. It's something that a lot of you may not be doing yet, but we can highly recommend it. It seems to go down well, and we've heard great case studies, for example, from Seagate yesterday, talking about how they're delivering the analytics platform in a more focused way to those users. Now, the last and probably the one that has the biggest challenge, and I'm going to pick on Rosaria here as a DS practice leader. She has got all of these different types of people working in her team, all of these different types of people. Her big challenge, she has to make sure the results are there. She has to make sure that there's responsibility for the business. She's got to make sure and not only just leverage and exploit, she's got to manage risk, but most importantly, she's got to keep everybody happy. Now, we're hoping that with some of the things we've done under the covers, that in KNIME and the things that you can use, it becomes easy for you to be a DS leader and actually make people happy. A couple of things I'll mention though. Jim mentioned this already when he was talking about server. We can capture it, we can instantiate, we can secure, we can version, and there's lots of things going on in this area to help you as a DS team leader of a team that's either physical or virtual to try to make sure that you can leverage as much as you can. Now, one thing that's new here that I wanted to highlight, there's a big topic at the moment, explainability, interpretability, either within the organization, within the team, or to different types of business users. There's lots of new things there. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, I'd recommend you go do that, particularly the interactive explainability component, which is quite nice for helping to start the process of explaining some of the things we're doing. Now, up until now, you can see that we've tried from a KNIME perspective to make sure that each member of the team has the things they need, but how do we go from there? We need to go to using the KNIME platform. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to quickly just show one slide. Of course, everything's around a workflow, but what we're going to do is I'm going to hand over to Mr. Rick Wakeman, Paolo himself, and let him show you how some of these things can be pulled together for collaboration. Paolo, it's over to you.
All right, so let me start by sharing my screen. All right, and let me go here and open this simple workflow and to show you all these different concepts in a single live demo. So first of all, you can see here this simple workflow. We are reading some data, we are selecting some features, we are partitioning between train and test data. We're doing some missing value imputation. We're training a random forest, and then we are evaluating its performance with an interactive view. Now, something nice that you could do is to actually make it even easier and share within your own organization or even within the entire community. So let me show you live how you can do that. So I'm going to select those 4 nodes. I'm going to right click and say create component. And Phil, how do we call this component?
Cool magic stuff.
All right, so cool magic stuff.
I can't call it AI because we all know that's not magic. So cool magic stuff. Yep.
All right. So now we created this component, and of course we can also customize it a bit. So if I go inside and you can still find the same nodes, we can go in view and description, and we can, for example, here customize. Here we can say again magic stuff. We can color the component by selecting maybe it's a learner, and we can even, for example, select here a little icon about magic stuff and so on. So we save this component, and now as I go back to the main workflow here, so let me close this, we can actually now share it with the community. So I can right click the component and go component share. Now I can select my KNIME hub and select this public space, click OK, and now the component is shared publicly. What does that mean? It means they can be found on the hub, and I can access the hub even here from the KNIME Analytics platform. So I select here the KNIME hub search panel and search here for cool magic stuff, we said. So cool magic stuff, and I search for it, and here we have cool magic stuff, the component about magic stuff. Of course, this is now just an example, right? We want to show you that it's super easy to make those components, to package something and share it with anyone, with everything. But what about reliable and components and reusable components, the ones that Gianni showed? What
Absolutely.
about those? So let's find something a bit more real, and let's use it in our workflow. And recently we shared a new component called AutoML component. So I can select here the AutoML component, and there is here this image that will show me how I can drag and drop it in my KNIME Analytics platform. So I go ahead and I drag and drop this component in my workflow. It's a big component. It takes a bit of time, but here we are. All right. So now we can, let me now maximize here again, so we can see better. And I can now replace this component that I created. And at this point, I can actually select the different settings here, and I can we can select, for example, delete the feature they want to predict and select the models they want to train. And by clicking OK, I can then execute, and we are going now to train all those models. This looks like a node, but it's not a node, it's a component. In fact, if I right-click, go component and open, I can go inside and actually see all this complex workflow that is being packaged in a way they can have all these dialogues here. Here you can see the configuration nodes, they open the dialogues. We can see all those other components that we call nested components, and we can have here all the complexity being hidden, but still here, and with all those annotation explained. Now, you can see that now the best model is being selected and exported here with integrated deployment. So if I go now back to the component is now ready, but let me open a workflow where, since we are a bit out of time, where we have already done the work of connecting more nodes. We have our component, we are actually using it, and the component also offers an interactive view that you can use to see all the models that were trained. So in this case, we trained all these different models, and to predict the delays of those flights, the logistic regression was the best model that was selected. Now, of course, AutoML can be computationally expensive or whatever complex component you have. So you might not always to execute this on your local machine, and you might want to execute this on a server. So how would that look like? Well, you can, of course, control components, workflows also for a server, and even here change the settings, just that the execution doesn't happen with the computational power of your machine, but the one of a server and all the possible executors you have there. And change the settings and so on. All right, so at this point, let me open here my workflow repository. I showed you all those different things that you can do with this component, but this is just one of them. Gianni showed you that there are so many others. And actually, if you go on the verified component page, you will find even more. The XI view was another one that Phil showed, but there are so many categories. And what's more important, those are all publicly shared on the app, but also we have also components made by the community that we highlight here, because of course we are happy when open source users provide even their components through here. So let me now go back a second and show you that maybe the output of this component, right? We have a component that wrote a workflow in the end. That's what it's exporting thanks to integrated deployment. You can see all these model that is being exported explained by this sequence of nodes, and those brown nodes is what is being saved by integrated deployment for exporting it. Now, this workflow can be deployed, can be given to a server, create a REST API, but we can also use it from any application. So let me show you an example.
Before you go away, just one thing. Remember I said early on that I'm not a machine learning person, but I don't mind learning. This is fantastic for me because with this example, something has actually been created that's been done properly. I can actually go into this workflow and learn how to do it myself a little bit. So I can say, what steps do I need? What do I have to take care of? And for the situation I chose, I actually can learn from the code. So not only can we reuse the code, I can actually use it to learn myself as well, which I love.
So again, this is the output we wrote from an AutoML component. We wrote the output, and the output is a workflow. And let's now take it and use it from the Jupyter notebook here. So this is the Jupyter notebook, and this is for the code first user that we showed before, right? He really likes to never abandon, for example, if he's a Python user, this Jupyter notebook, and he can call the workflow here, inspect it. This is the same workflow again. And then he can, for example, load some data using pandas, and then here using a script to execute the workflow. And then you can get the predictions back out of the output of the workflow. And once you have the prediction back in Jupyter, you can visualize distribution, visualize the confusion matrix, or visualize, for example, all standard error C curve. Of course, once you have what you needed from the workflow, you can just keep on coding and do whatever you want. But again, it's just a use case here. So if you are interested in more about this, there will be a webinar next week where we are going to go through more details of this use case. So let's now talk about another workflow, and that would be, for example, the idea of taking the component and instead of simply using a workflow or exporting whatever it has to export and read it, for example, on Jupyter Notebook or deploying on KNIME Server, we want instead to package it using these interactive views to make it even more accessible. So this is a workflow that can be used from the KNIME Analytics Platform, and you can see all those different interactive views to control how the AutoML component executes using widget nodes. So what I want to select here to train the model, what is my target, and so on. But what's really interesting is that the same application can be hidden from the eyes of the user that is using it via the KNIME WebPortal. In fact, if I now move on to the KNIME WebPortal, here we are. We have here the same exact application I just showed you with now I put to full screen that is accessible via Google Chrome, but it could be also any other web browser. So now I select the data that I want to use. Again, the line 2009 samples, it's just a tiny sample of data, but it could be any data. And then I put my credential, I go ahead. In this case, maybe we don't want to train deep learning cards because it's taking a bit of time with all those epochs, but we can then select what the columns we want. We can expect the data a bit more, but let's now just click next and let's see this workflow executing. So at this point, we're training all the models. Again, the user doesn't need to see the workflow, but if we would go back to KNIME, we would see the AutoML component retraining all those models again and spitting out the best one. And here we have those is metadata of all the models, but the best one is the XGBoost trees, which is the one I showed you before. And you can see here that you can get information that was decided via widgets and view nodes. And for example, the download widgets node, they can be used to download, again, the best model to use it anywhere you want. All right, so let me go back to the slides a second and back to you, Phil.
Absolutely.
Here. And here we are.
Lovely. Absolutely. Now, what Paolo's tried to do very, very quickly, and Paolo, I don't know how you were able to do that so fast. You see what I mean by keyboards, folks? I mean, he's fantastic. What we showed you up to date is all production software, but you started seeing from Bount and from all of the team, some of the things that are coming in the release in December and a little further after that. When we talk about collaboration, we'd like to make sure that you realize that a lot of the things you need for collaborating, for sharing, the public-private spaces, the searching, the drag and drop, all of those things are available on hub.knime.com right now, the public hub, so you can go in and start thinking about how that will work for your organization. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to end with just a very, very tiny peek, enter key please, at using the hub for the enterprise. Now, you heard yesterday, Seagate's going to be one of the very first one. But we want you to be thinking about this. So, Paolo, show us what you've got.
All right, so you have seen the AutoML component, even the inside of it. It was really complex, right? In fact, we needed to have a big team to get it done. And this means that we have all those different components in here, the nested components, they were given access to different teams. The AutoML data prep component was given access to a team. Then we have the learner and the predictor, another team. Of course, there are some intersections, but the point is that you are sharing those on different spaces on the app where only few people can have read and write access in order to change things. And at the end, there is even another space where you have the user testing. So let me just show you how it will look. I'm the project owner, so I have access to all the spaces, and I have all those 4 spaces where the different team members can have access to. Again, I said the data access and preparation. Here we have the part where we need to do all the data blending and data preparation given the different models. Then we have the machine learning part where we are going to instead having both the people that want to code models or even use KNIME nodes or code, and also the deployment experts from MLOps. And then again, here the collaboration for the deployment itself, or how is the deployment in that organization, making sure that everything there goes smoothly. And at the end, of course, a lot of testing has to take place, and that would happen in another space that is called the user testing, where we have the people that will actually use the final application, web-based, and the component itself to get feedback and to get an improvement by improvement. So to show you quickly how this is possible right now, this is again a quick review. Let me go back to the app, and let's select here, like Tobias showed before, this profile. This profile where you can see all the things I like and so on, but think of this that I have now spaces, and I have here the different spaces, the public one, but also the private ones, the machine learning, the user testing, data access preparation, but as well the user testing. You can see here that we have access to the data science leader, the business analyst, and information consumer. And let's now add access also to another user. I click here.
Can I, put me in there.
Of course, I was thinking someone else, but sure, let's add Phil. So I add Phil, and then I can save changes, and there we go. Now Phil has access to this space, and he can also write in here. And how would people communicate each other? Well, they can communicate in any way they like, but there is also a possibility here to use this on each page. This is the page of the workflow of the web-based application, where we can see the different persona are talking to one another to take steps on what is the time for. You need to update a component, you need to re-update everything, who needs to push what, and this can also all take place on the KNIME Hub. All right, so I think we can
back to the final slide.
Go back to the slides, yeah.
Absolutely.
So, there we go.
That's right. What we've done is we've tried to show you how KNIME is looking at collaboration, providing you all the underlying capabilities for all of the different users, because after all, there's just a different mix for each one of them. Everything we showed you was production. So the capabilities on the hub, you can start playing with them on the public hub right now, and you'll be hearing more and more from us over the coming days. Got 2 more slides to show before we finish out. Johnny already mentioned this. I can urge you, I'm going to sell this really hard. Go to this Pros Learnathon. One of the things you've picked up, I think, out of this presentation is the concept of reliable, reusable components. There's going to be these 3 sessions. You go to the website, click, then go and choose one of the 3 sessions that's most interesting for you. And the real wizards are going to be there to show you with some hands-on exactly how to go about doing this. I think it's really popular. Last slide. So what we showed is tried to go about showing the different things. I'm not going to go through the last thing, the compliance, just keep clicking. There's things for compliance there. Just keep clicking. Another click, another for IT operations. We've covered that. Last click, final slide, because I know we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to wash their hands. What we've tried to do is show what KNIME's doing for successful team collaboration and how we're trying to, behind the scenes, make those things very, very, very usable to all of you.